Hi everyone, welcome to the week 3 video. In this video, we're going to review summary and synthesis, overview some definitions, and talk about effectiveness and ineffectiveness. And then we're going to introduce Project 2, the summary and synthesis essay. Here's your writing warm-up. I want you to take about 5 minutes and write about your familiarity and experience with summary and synthesis in the following steps. First, define summary in your own words. Second, define synthesis in your own words. Third, when you think of summary and synthesis, what sort of writing projects come to mind? Fourth, to you, what is the most important aspect to communicate to a reader in summary and synthesis? Before we dive in and talk about Unit 2 and the summary and synthesis project, I wanted to give a brief reminder about your Unit 1 project, the language autoethnography, that is due at the beginning of this week on Monday. Remember, that's going to encompass your essay that explores and reflects on 2 of your own language uses as rhetorical practices through examples. It's a minimum of 700 words. It also includes a 300-word statement of goals and choices that explores your audience impact, your goals, and your choices, and what risks you took. Remember, these are separate, so your total essay should be 1,000 words minimum. And then also your self-evaluation form. You assign your own grade for this unit. Make sure you turn that in. It's right under where you find the PDF prompt document for this assignment. If it will not let you fill out the document for some reason, you can put your increase, decrease steps in the final grade in the comment box when you submit your assignment. Okay, Project 2 is a summary and synthesis essay. You're going to have an opening paragraph that synthesizes the conversation around 2 texts. These 2 texts are going to come from the Unit 2 reading folder, which you can find in this week's folder. You will have summaries of the 2 texts and explain the context of the text and the author's main argument and ideas. Something that's important to keep in mind for this assignment, which we're going to talk about a little more in depth in a moment. Your audiences for this assignment. You have 3 audiences. Your intended audience, your primary audience, is college students, students like you. Students who may be wishing to take English 1301 courses and want to know what kind of readings that they can expect. College writing teachers are your secondary audience. They're going to be the people who are teaching the course material. And then lastly, your third one. If you can do a bit of imagining, you're writing this summary and synthesis article as if you would be submitting it to belong in a piece in an anthology. This is actually from the prompt. So, your gatekeeper audience in this assignment is the editor of the anthology. What do we mean by gatekeeper audience? Gatekeeper audience, as I'm sure you're all familiar with the term gatekeep, means to prevent someone from doing something. It means to prevent access. The reason that the editor of the anthology is your gatekeeper audience is because they are the ones who could stop you from being able to publish this article and reaching your primary and secondary audience of college students and college writing teachers. So, as you're preparing this article, keep in mind these audiences in the back of your mind. How are you going to change your language so that you are reaching those audience best? Additionally, you're going to have a writer's memo that's 300 words. It identifies 3 specific choices made and explores why you made those choices. You will note, which we will also talk about a little more next week, you don't necessarily need to have an introduction or conclusion to this essay. Instead, you're just going to want to hit that synthesis and that summary. So now let's review summary and synthesis. Summary, as defined in your textbook, is a brief restatement of a source's key points in your own words. It is accurate and fair. It focuses on the main point, thesis, or central claim, uses quotes sparingly, if at all. Synthesis is a combination of various elements into a whole, different perspectives in conversation with each other. But how do you do these things? What makes them effective? We talked about in the very first week's video, I believe, how understanding audience, understanding purpose, medium, genre, how all of these things can increase a message's effectiveness. This is also going to be important for this assignment, understanding how to make something effective. An effective summary is one that, like I said, is accurate and fair. It focuses on the main points thesis, or central claims, but it also is going to provide context for readers. It is comprehensive to provide understanding of the text, but it is selective in its details. And lastly, it is rhetorically developed, mindful of its audience and its purpose. And again, this is from your chapter 6 in your textbook. First, what do we mean by selective in details? You do not want to recount the whole article. A goal of a summary, the most effective summary, is one that someone reads and then they decide that they wish to go read the text afterwards, or that they want to go view the text afterwards. You are selective in your details because you are picking the most important things, the key things, the things that are crucial to understanding. You don't need every detail, just the most important ones. So make sure you're providing understanding. Each detail that you're selecting should be selected for a specific purpose. There should be a reason that you're choosing that specific argument or that specific theme or that claim. That's also going to come back and it's also going to come back and show up in your writer's memo again. So keep that in mind. You may not be realizing that you're making all of these choices as you're making them until you go back and review what you've written, but you will be making these choices. Mindful of its audience and its purpose. We just talked about how you have the audience of college students and college writing teachers and the editor of the anthology. So your summary needs to be mindful of that, needs to be mindful of the audience, that you have 3. You're trying to write elevated enough, and I say elevated as in being accurate and fair and concise and comprehensive, so that you can impress the editor of the anthology, who could prevent you from getting to your primary and secondary audience. But you also want to write at a level of understanding that other college students can access your writing and find it comprehensive and inviting, and college writing teachers who might want to add this stuff to their curriculum. So whenever you're writing, always keep in mind your audience that's in the back of your mind, your purpose. You're trying to get into that anthology. You're trying to reach your college students. You're trying to reach college teachers. So this screenshot comes from your textbook. It is a very nice list of steps for writing an effective summary. I am not going to go over all of this. If you are struggling with writing a summary, go back and review this, either on this video or in your textbook. Follow these steps, and you will be able to come up with this summary. It walks you through exactly how to search the text and to pull things from it. And this is what's going to make an effective summary. So what makes an effective synthesis? The synthesis, I have noticed, is a part of the essay that students tend to struggle a little bit more on. I think it is taught more frequently how to write summaries and not so much synthesis. So an effective synthesis identifies the intersections of entire conversations within a few examples. Essentially what that means is you are looking at a big picture and you are connecting the threads between one example and the other, and you're pulling them together so that you can stitch the picture into its whole view. It identifies perspectives and stresses similarities within those perspectives. So you're going to talk about similarities. What are they agreeing on? What do they see eye to eye on? Identifies perspectives and explores differences within those perspectives. What do they disagree on? Where are the arguments at? And then lastly, it draws on sources to support claims, which goes back to that first point. A synthesis cannot work if it is only talking about one text. That's why you talk about both texts in your synthesis. You bring them into conversation together. You pull them together to see what is coming in the middle. Essentially, if it helps your understanding, think of your synthesis as a summary of your summaries. How to synthesize. As I mentioned, it is not as frequently taught how to do synthesis, so it might help to have an example, and I have provided one here. As we just talked about, synthesizing puts text in conversation with one another, even if they do not seem alike. The general formatting, this is something you can borrow. Quote, both rhetors use X, however, your first author uses Y and author 2 uses Z and then you're going to go into your explanation. They are both discussing, insert overarching arguments, but they take different approaches because of their own experiences, positions, personal stakes, etc. So that is how you can do your synthesis. It is essentially going to be saying, you know, this author does this, and this author does this, and this author does this. But then they come together, and here's where they're agreeing. This is where they align, and this is why these texts are working together to talk about some larger conversation. When we say larger conversation, we mean themes, themes of life, themes of lived experience. You will notice that all of the text for this specific unit surround creativity. So the reoccurring larger conversations you're going to be seeing are themes of creativity, how to live a creative life, and what it means to be a creative person in the world as it is today. But that's just a few. There are many more to pick up on. And as always, you're going to want to be specific and concise in your synthesis, as well as in your summaries. What makes an ineffective summary and synthesis? This is important to think about as well. An ineffective summary and synthesis is one that is opinionated. Instead, you should opt for objective language. Truthfully, it matters little what you think about the articles that you're reading or the text. You may not agree with what you're reading. It is okay to not agree with what you're reading. However, it should not show up in your summary and synthesis. You are attempting to be objective in your retelling of what you see happening in the text and not letting it get muddled with your own opinions. So make sure you're not opinionated whenever you're writing your summary and synthesis, because that makes it incredibly ineffective. You should not include false accounts. Basically, don't lie whenever you're writing your summary and synthesis. Don't make things up, because I'm reading the text, all of your peers are reading the text. We know what it says. Don't lie. Be fair and be accurate. An ineffective summary and synthesis would not use attributive tags. Instead, make sure you're using the rhetor's last name when you're referencing them. Sometimes students have a habit of using the author's first name. Please do not use the rhetor's first name. Use their last name. And if you're using quotes, you're going to want to use MLA in text citations. That is going to look like the rhetor's last name, the page number, or rhetor's last name, the title of the video, or where it's sourced from, so TED Talk. It is incredibly important that you cite what you're pulling from the text so that you do not get into the realm of plagiarism. We can also talk about next week how to avoid patch writing, which is another form of plagiarism that is a little more common than just like stealing an author's ideas. But loosely right now, patch writing is whenever you take a sentence from an author and you change keywords so that it looks like it's your own writing, but it's actually not, because you're just using the author's sentence and changing it slightly. So for example, it would be like, if the author wrote, "The dog ran fast," and you rewrote that in your essay as "the dog ran quickly," that is plagiarism. That is patch writing. You can't do that. It has to be in your own words. And if it's not in your own words, then you better be citing it. An ineffective summary and synthesis does not explore the conversations happening between text, i.e., you don't do the synthesis part. Please do the synthesis part. And then lastly, an ineffective summary and synthesis avoids discussing the main points or central claims of the text. You focus on the wrong details. And you can be sure that you're focusing on the correct details and the ones that are going to provide the most comprehensive by going back and reviewing these slides and reviewing chapter 6 in your textbook, because it is very, very helpful on walking you through how to identify what is important in a text. I also have 2 exercises for you that should be useful, I hope, for all of you to practice identifying what's important in the text and kind of working through your thoughts on the text before you're starting to turn in things for them. So for summary exploration, I want you to select one of the texts in the Unit 2 readings folder and answer the following questions about that text. Repeat as desired. So if you have the 2 texts that you already want to write about for your essay, you could go ahead and do this exercise for both of them. The first question, what argument is being made by the rhetor? Second, how is language being used by the rhetor? Third, who is the intended audience for this text? And 4, from your knowledge of rhetoric, do you see any rhetorical devices or appeals being used? So that's going to be things like ethos, pathos, logos, kairos, identification, and more. I'm, of course, blanking, but there are several more. We will talk a bit more about rhetorical devices and appeals when we get closer to Unit 3. But it's something to keep in the back of your mind because you will be revisiting these texts for Unit 3. Synthesis practice. I have listed 10 to 15 minutes here. You can do longer, you can do shorter. Select 2 texts from the Unit 2 readings, preferably the ones you want to write your summaries over. I want you to make a quick list of the text similarities and their differences. Put them side by side to help visualize your connections. If it helps you, you can draw physical lines between the things that are connecting. How do these agreements or disagreements contribute to an ongoing conversation surrounding the topic or issue? Reflect on that. How are they contributing or not contributing? Ideally, you want to talk about contributing though, but you may see that things aren't lining up. And then, for example, I mentioned the themes of like living a creative life. Okay, for this week, on Monday, as mentioned, you are going to submit your final language autoethnography project. That is going to be your essay, your statement of goals and choices, and your self-evaluation form. On Wednesday, you have your initial post of your draft of summary 1 and 2. Basically, what you're going to do for that is you're going to pick 2 texts from the Unit 2 reading folder, and you're going to write up 2 summaries for it. The discussion forum has detailed questions on everything you should be doing for that assignment. And then Friday, you have your initial post of reading the conversations. This one's a little longer, a little more in-depth perhaps than your summary. It's asking you to do a bit more reflection work, but those questions that are listed there, you're going to have 2 options. So you can either do the first option or the second option for your discussion forum. These 2 practices here will help you be prepared for this assignment. And then lastly, just a general reminder, make sure you're staying on top of your textbook reading and your quizzes. Okay, if you have any questions, use that Q&A forum or send me an email. Otherwise, take care and I'll see you in the next video.